Hello, Jeremiah, your old chili cook. I'm going to tell you about chili, where it came from, where it originated from, how to cook it, why you should really care about it. The first thing we need to figure out is, where did this chili, this great American dish, come from? Well, I'm a student of chili. Right over here are some of the books that I've read about chili. This one comes from a man that you may have heard of, George Leonard Herder from Waseca, Minnesota. That's a chili connection. He believes that chili was given as a vision to Mary of Agreda. While she was asleep in Portugal, she got the first recipe for chili. So that's pretty important. This book right here is by Jane Boodle. She's a real chili nut, and her book is titled Chili Madness. And she talks about different kinds of chili from all over the Southwest. This book is the Great Chili Cookbook. It is probably one of the most important chili books ever written. And you can learn a lot about history, about the chili queens, and where chili originated. This is the Bible of Chili, A Bowl of Red by Frank X. Tolbert. Now, Frank was a guy from New York City, but he won the first chili contest held in Lubbock, Texas. The person he beat, by the way, was Carroll Shelby. Yeah, that Shelby of the Mustang fame. A couple other little books. The Tex-Mex book by Sam Huddleston, another chili pioneer. But you know what? They're only as good as they can be. Let me tell you the real story of chili. Chili was invented by range cooks on cattle drives. One thing they had was fresh meat, cattle, not much else. They had wild onions, wild oregano, and they had chili pods because they were dried. Well, as the cattle drive would go on, the cook would start making chili, and every cook had his own recipe. Chili is serious business. The ingredients of chili are pretty simple. You got meat, you got chili, and you don't got much else. So let me show you a couple of the ingredients. One thing those early cooks would have had is access to onions, wild onions. Now, I'm not saying that this one is a wild onion, but it is an onion. And the next thing they would have access to is wild Mexican oregano, and that's what this is right here. The third thing that they would have access to is cumin. Now, cumin looks like this. It's used in Indian food, East Indian, and it's used in Mexican food. But the way we're going to use our cumin is we're going to toast it so it turns out brown like this, and it's much more fragrant. Now, we could dispense with all this and buy chili powder. This particular chili powder is called Stone Mill. It's got chili peppers, other spices, salt, something called silicon dioxide. It may contain milk, wheat, and soy. Those are all things that should not go into your chili. So what we're going to do is dispense with that and make our own chili powder. We're going to use the cumin, and we're going to use 3 types of chili peppers. Now, lots of people think that chili peppers are really, really hot, and they can be. They can be. They can be terribly hot. But the chilies that we're going to use are flavor chilies. The first chili that we're going to use is called chili guajillo. Now, this is one of the 3 of the trinity of Mexican chilies. I've ground it up here. You can see it's kind of a dark red color, but it started its life out as this, dried. All chili that goes into chili is a dry chili, not a fresh chili like a jalapeno or something that you might get down at the grocery store. So that first one is chili guajillo. The second chili that we're going to use is called chili mulatto. And you can see it's much, much darker. It's much, much darker. It's almost black in color. And it looks like this before I ground it up. Again, this chili is not particularly hot, but it's full of that chili flavor. The third chili that we're going to use is ancho chili. Now, ancho chili is simply jalapenos that have been roasted and dried and ground. And so that's this chili here. This is the hottest chili of the three, and we will use very little of it in our chili, but it does add a depth of character, and I know all of you want depth of character. So there you have it. The last item we'll use is sea salt. Okay, sea salt. All of those chilies I ground in a pestle and mortar, just like this. I have some pretty fancy ones, but this is my baby. I really like this pestle and mortar right here, and I can really grind up some chilies. All right, shall we get started cooking our chili? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a bowl. And by the way, this bowl right here is perfect for eating chili or making our chili powder. So what we're going to do, don't ordinarily do this, but for you folks, I'm going to measure. We're going to take a tablespoon of the mulatto. That's that dark chili. And we're not going to get too carried away. It's just going to be a level tablespoon. We're going to put that in our bowl. We're going to take a teaspoon of the guajillo chili. And again, we're not going to get too carried away, but we're going to put that in our bowl. And we're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of the ancho chili. Again, we're not going to get too heapy. We're going to pour that in there. Then, of our Mexican oregano, let's go for a 1/2 teaspoon. Maybe a full teaspoon. And lastly, our cumin. We're going to put a whole teaspoon of cumin in. We're going to put a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Thereabouts. We're going to use our mixer, and we're going to mix this up. Now, I guarantee you, once you've tasted this, you will never buy another jar of chili powder and think you got anything special. So there we go. We've got our chili powder right there. Let's go ahead and get started with cooking the meat. Now, the first thing we got to do is we got to prepare the meat. How many of you have had chili made out of hamburger? I'm sorry, you really haven't had chili. You've had some sort of meat sauce. I'm not saying it was bad, but it certainly wasn't chili. Chili is made out of beef, and beef that is cut up in small pieces. Does that look like hamburger? I think not. What we do is we take our beef, and the nice thing about chili is we cook it for so long, you don't have to buy filet mignon. You can get stew beef, and it's going to taste good. In fact, I dare say it tastes better than if you use filet mignon. You take your knife and you begin to cut that chili You look for a piece about the size of your thumb. And there you go. It's all cut. Camp Cook had very few tools that he could count on. One of those tools that he could count on was the cast iron pot. This cast iron pot could bounce around in a chuck wagon all day long. And at night he could pull it out and it'd make some fine beef stew. And it'd make some even better chili. The only other item required is a chili stirring stick. Use the same one over and over again, and pretty soon that stick will be good enough to eat. The camp cook had tallow, because they slaughtered the cow and they had tallow. We're going to use a little bit of lard to get our chili meat started. What we're going to go for here is a nice gray, kind of ashy color. We'll let this get hot, and I'll be right back. Okay, folks, as you can see, our chili has turned that nice gray color, and a lot of the moisture has come out of the meat. Well, it's time to make this into chili. So what I'm going to do is dump in our first dump of chili seasoning. I'm going to mix that in. I'm going to cover it with water. And we're going to let that cook. And we'll be right back. Okay, my friends. What we've got over here now is that chili. It's been cooking for an hour or so. It's got a lot more cooking to do. And there's a couple of things that we're going to add to it. One of them is kind of controversial. It's beans. Plain old pinto beans, or as our Spanish friends say, frijoles pintos. Now, down Texas way, where chili came from, nothing is added to the chili that we haven't already talked about. The seasonings, the onions, the oregano, and the beef, that's it. But there is a school of thought that pinto beans have a place in chili. Many people serve them on the side. Some of them put them right in. I tend to put chili beans, the pinto beans, right in the chili. But I do it at the very, very end. And I just like the taste of the beans. Now remember, I put that whole thing of water in there. It's covered over the top of the chili. It's been simmering nice and slow. The flavors of the chili spice going deep into the meat, tenderizing the meat. Well, we still have quite a bit of fluid in there, and so when this chili is done cooking, I'm going to use my last item in it. And what that is tamal flour. Okay? And we're going to use that as a thickener. It's a corn flour. You make tamales out of it. One of my favorite foods. It should be its own food group. Yeah, so we'll use a little bit of that to thicken that up. And at the very end, we're going to add the chili beans, and our chili is going to be ready to eat. I hope you enjoy it. Had a lot of fun making this video for you. And I'll see you real soon. Bye.